My name is Javier Hernandez and my nickname is Chicharito.
At CES 2020, approximately 18 months ago, the big news of the show was AMD's Ryzen 4000 mobile processors, and the laptop that really won CES was the ASUS ROG Zephyrus G15.
So this is the ROG Zephyrus G15 and I'm now a DJ behind my deck. So the key feature here is the Ryzen 4000 APU from AMD, and that is Zen 2 7nm technology. Graphics wise, we're talking up to RTX 2060.
Everybody who reviewed that laptop loved it to pieces, including myself. That laptop ran on a Ryzen 4000 CPU with a Vega graphics core, and it had add-in RTX 2060 graphics. And we frankly were relieved to see AMD back in the laptop market, taking the fight to Intel. The full name of this laptop is ASUS ROG Strix G15 Advantage Edition G513QY. Heck of a mouthful, there's a lot in there, let's unpack it. ASUS ROG Strix rather than Zephyrus. It's a relatively chunky laptop. G15, that was the G14, this is a 15-inch screen, that was a 14-inch. Advantage Edition, really significant, might not mean much to you. Advantage is AMD's scheme for guiding manufacturers in the specification of laptops, the components they should use in an AMD laptop. It's similar to Project Athena from Intel. This Advantage Edition is distinguished from other ASUS ROG Strix G15 laptops because it has both an AMD processor and AMD graphics. In this laptop we have an AMD Ryzen 9 5900HX and also AMD Radeon RX 6800M graphics. RDNA 2 graphics have hit laptops finally. So we've got bang up to date graphics and a bang up to date processor because it's Zen 3 rather than that old crusty Zen 2, which we liked quite a lot, but we like Zen 3 better. On the face of it, this Strix G15 has an awful lot to show, but it also has an awful lot to live up to because that Zephyrus G14 was bloomin' good. This ASUS ROG Strix G15 Advantage Edition was sent to us by AMD because it's a showcase for AMD Advantage. So let's tackle what is covered in AMD Advantage and then we'll look at this specific laptop. Let's start with those graphics. RDNA 2. Dominic has reviewed a great many graphics cards based on RDNA 2, so we consider that to be understood technology. The question obviously is, what has AMD done to squeeze RDNA 2 into the mobile form factor? We can see RX 6800M, RX 6700M, RX 6600M, and the respective power targets, 145 watts and up, 135 watts, 100 watts, which in turn gives you gaming of 1440p, 1440p or maybe 1080p and 1080p. Those figures should give you pause for thought. Clearly, if those were desktop graphics solutions, that's not a lot of power and there's no mention of 4K gaming. However, for laptops, lots of power. So how exactly has AMD squared that circle? RX 6800M, look, 40 compute units, high clock speed, 12 gigabytes of memory, 96 megabytes of infinity cache. RX 6700M, 90% of the compute units, so 36 compute units, again a high clock speed, 2.3 gigahertz, 10 gigabytes of memory, 80 meg of infinity cache. 6600M down to 28 compute units, clock speed still pretty bloomin' high, 8 gig of memory, 32 megabytes of infinity cache. Put that together according to AMD and you've got decent performance. I've compiled a chart based on AMD's specs for their mobile graphics and also their desktop graphics. And here you can see that RX 6800 on the desktop and RX 6800M, for example, are not the same thing. Essentially the names and the core technology is carried over, but the specs mean that desktop RX 6800 has not been squeezed into a laptop with RX 6800M. It's also the case that the amount of memory has been cut down, and so too has the memory interface. You can see that RX 6800M, 6700M, 6600M are new graphics, but they are not desktop graphics chips. AMD Advantage extends beyond the core hardware, the processor and the graphics chip. AMD was very keen to talk about the importance of a decent display panel. We completely agree, of course. Ideally, you'll have a Quad HD 1440p panel, failing that a decent 1080p. AMD's definition of decent or premium is a refresh rate over 144 Hz and a brightness of 300 nits or above. They're talking about IPS and OLED panels, i.e. no TN or VA, but IPS actually in their terms means IPS-level. The processor inside this laptop is a Ryzen 9 5900HX. There are 6 models in the Ryzen 5000 mobile family, and the Ryzen 9 5900HX sits third in the stack of 6. So it's got 8 cores, 16 threads, max boost is 4.6 GHz, base speed 3.3 GHz, and the TDP is 45 watts plus. And now we've covered the AMD Advantage side of things, let's move on to the specifics of the ASUS ROG Strix G15. We've got a very pretty looking laptop in my opinion. The WASD keys are highlighted for gamers, as you can see, and we've got on the aesthetic side of things this curious little accent piece here. So a red for AMD, slides off and can be replaced with a silver ROG piece or a clear ROG piece. Let's put the clear piece on like so. The silver piece looks a bit kind of rattle can spray, so I'm going to go back to the original red. You'll note retained by a little magnet. I like that. I don't quite see why the alternate pieces are supplied. In terms of the specification, we have a couple of USBs and a headset jack on this side. Nothing at all on this side. Nothing on the front. Handful of ports and connectors on the rear. I personally feel power connector in the back is slightly more awkward than power connector in the side. The USBs on the side, they are USB 3.2 Gen 1s, type A obviously, and we have a combo headset jack. On the rear, we have a third of those USB 3.2 Gen 1s. We also have USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C, which supports DisplayPort. Next to that, HDMI 2.0B. The Ethernet is for Realtek gigabit networking. The Wi-Fi internally, and this is a surprise to me, is by MediaTek, so it is Wi-Fi 6, but it is a brand I haven't previously worked with. I have to say the connection and the speed was perfectly acceptable, but did not seem to be anything particularly special. I understand the MediaTek Wi-Fi is going to be rebadged by AMD, so we can expect to see AMD Wi-Fi 6 coming soon. It will be MediaTek. And then we come to the display panel, which is full HD, 300 Hz refresh, IPS level, whatever the heck that means, but it's not true IPS. Looks very good, viewing angle is absolutely great, and the colors lovely. Specification is nothing particularly special in terms of ports and connectors. Internally, the cooling system is something to behold. You cannot see the liquid metal from Thermal Grizzly. In fact, I'm going to say I haven't seen the liquid metal because I'm not pulling that cooler off. Break that connection, there could be problems. The cooler itself is a vapor chamber. And just look, it's actually been marked up with the CPU and GPU. Not certain if that's printed or engraved, but it looks the absolute business. It is such a shame the average owner will never actually see that cooler. But for the internals of a laptop, this is just something special. You get 16 gigabytes of dual channel DDR4-3200. The SSD is a slightly disappointing 512 gigabyte Samsung, which is Gen 3 rather than Gen 4. The battery is a reasonably sized 90 watt hour, 5675 milliamp hour 4-cell unit. Externally, there is no webcam. How this is possible in 2021, I do not begin to comprehend. The weight of the laptop, 2.3 kilos. The 280 watt power adapter adds another 1 kilo. So the weight is middling to getting a bit heavy. If you've reached this far in the review, I trust you're enthralled, so why not subscribe to KitGuruTech and ring the bell. You can also join us on Discord and our other social media channels, and we now have a join button below the screen. It's all going off here, isn't it, at KitGuru? Before I get to the performance testing, I want to show you one more thing. So I'm playing a YouTube video of myself because my ego is just enormous, and as you can hear, the speakers are down low. Okay, I'm now going to restart the laptop. And let's see and listen to what happens. I mean, why? I can't find a way in the settings in Armoury Crate in the BIOS to disable that sound. It seems to be baked in, which I find remarkable. And believe you me, it gets really intrusive. Anyway, that's out of the way. Let's get on with testing. Testing was carried out with the Armoury Crate software in performance mode. You've got kind of a tiered system going on. You've got the power modes in Windows, and then you've got AMD's own power shifter technology balancing the CPU and GPU. And then on top of that, you've got Armoury Crate. In 3D Mark Time Spy, the new Gigabyte Aorus 17G, that's an 8-core Tiger Lake, came top of the charts, and the ASUS ROG Strix trailed behind by about 10%. Blender is a different story. In Blender BMW, we see the ASUS ROG Strix at the top of the charts by a significant margin. Second in those charts is that old ROG Zephyrus G14. In Blender Classroom, which is a rather longer test, again we see the ROG Strix G15 at the top of the charts. You will note that's running at 45 watts. In second place we have the Aura 17G running at 70 watts. If you go down to fourth place in the chart, you'll see the 17G running at 45 watts. This is a demonstration of how the AMD Ryzen 9 delivers an awful lot of grunt for relatively little power. So Cinebench R15 multi-core, it's the ROG Strix G15 at the top of the charts. Single core, same story. Oh look here, Cinebench R20 multi-core, it's the ROG Strix at the top of the chart. Here it's drawing 74 watts, but that's considerably less than the Aura 17G, which is pulling 95 watts. In Cinebench R20 single core, at the top of the chart by a narrow margin, we have the MSI Whitebook. That was a pre-production Tiger Lake quad-core processor. That little quad-core, very nice in single-core performance. Of course, when it comes to multi-core, it gets somewhat crushed. The first big processor in this chart is, once again, the ASUS ROG Strix G15. Moving on to Cinebench R23, and we've got the ROG Strix G15 at the top of the charts by a significant margin. Single core, the Tough Dash 15, so that's a quad-core Tiger Lakes at the top, but you'll notice the difference in the scores, not a lot. ROG Strix G15 beats out the 8-core Tiger Lake from Gigabyte. Gaming. Here's where we get to see what these new RDNA 2 graphics get to do. RX 6800M in action. Here's the thing, the frame rates are pretty bloomin' good. In Deus Ex Mankind Divided, the RTX 3080 is at the top of the charts. Second in the charts, RTX 2080, and then we come to the new RX 6800M. Clearly 90.7 frames per second on average, 68.6 minimum is nothing to be sneezed at. This is brand new technology and it's not at the top of the chart. When we ignore the absolute low in minimum, it doesn't make a lot of difference. The RTX 3080 still beats out the RX 6800M by a measurable margin. Far Cry 5 New Dawn, it's the same story. The new AMD graphics are doing a decent job, but they're not winning. And we dig in deeper with Far Cry 5 New Dawn, and you can see the difference is quite significant. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint, RX 6800M at the top of the charts with 98 frames per second on average. Second place, RTX 3080, 96. Okay, that's the win for the AMD setup, but 98-96 is effectively a tie. Watch Dogs Legion, once again the win goes to the RTX 3080. AMD trails behind by 5 frames. The temperatures in Time Spy stress test. I was somewhat surprised to see both the CPU and GPU running at 82 degrees Celsius. We know how AMD does things. It essentially piles on the power and cranks up the speed until the temperature becomes, in their terms, unacceptable. It's a sophisticated system. Nonetheless, of the various laptops I've tested in recent times, this laptop internally is running hotter than the rest. But it is still clear to see everything's completely under control. And then we come to the battery test. The battery in this laptop is a decent size, but it is not huge, and yet the battery life is absolutely superb. That PC Mark 8 test, 350 minutes on average, which you can double in the real world. You can double that up to 700 minutes. We're talking about 12 hours of general purpose battery life. You can see here just how efficient this AMD hardware is. This is a really impressive figure. Here's a bit of eye candy while I sum up my feelings about the ASUS ROG Strix G15 Advantage Edition. But have you noticed I haven't yet told you the price of this laptop? It's due to go on sale in 2 or 3 days' time. How much do you think it is here in the UK, including VAT? Let's put aside the big shortage and who knows about supply and so on. How much do you think it is? £1,500? 2,000? 2.5? 3? Pick a figure. The answer is 1 penny under £1,900. And I went back to both ASUS and AMD separately and double checked that price. Admittedly, AMD said talk to ASUS, even though AMD supplied the laptop. But ASUS has absolutely categorically confirmed that price, and I was surprised. I thought it might be 2.5 grand, as much as that, because the graphics, to my mind, are taking the fight towards RTX 3080. They're not quite there, but they're blooming close. And RTX 3080 laptops are not cheap things, particularly 8-core processors. So this laptop, to my mind, is very good value for money. However, it is not perfect. My cons for this laptop: you don't get a webcam, which I just consider to be daft. I'm sure ASUS's position is this is a gaming laptop. We're doing a webcam for, so no, laptop webcam, end of story. I would have preferred it if the G15 sample had shipped with a 1440p panel rather than 1080. 1080 is acceptable on a 15-inch panel, but nonetheless, 1440 I think is where this should be hanging. And if that's 144Hz rather than 300Hz, but the high resolution, I'll be absolutely fine with that. The SSD is 0.5 TB in size. It's Gen 3. That just seems to me give me more. High capacity, faster, but then of course price. But even so, we're significant inside £2,000. I think there's scope for a better, faster, large capacity SSD. The Wi-Fi 6 is not brilliant, but it works okay. I haven't mentioned it. This chassis picks up fingerprints like it's going out of fashion. I've cleaned this chassis down many times during the course of this video. I've moved it around wearing gloves. It's like so many laptops, it's tricksy. And then the pros. I like the screen, even though it's 1080, it looks good. The Ryzen 9 processor is impressive. I'm surprised how it's not a monumental leap forward from the previous Zen 2, but it is good. The Radeon A2 graphics, certainly they are good, no argument there. They're not like a whole new leap of technology forward, kind of blowing NVIDIA out of the water stuff, but they're good. But then you saw how far these graphics have been cut down from the desktop graphics, so perhaps that's not such a surprise. And then very good battery life. But it's a balance. AMD's clearly managing the power inside this laptop very effectively. And the consequence is, with an average size battery life is absolutely brilliant. So overall, I'm impressed. There is scope for improvement, of that there's no doubt. AMD Advantage appears to make sense, which is a good thing. This ASUS ROG Strix G15 Advantage Edition, me likey.